What's going on, everybody? Mitch here. Welcome back to another video. And recently I've been asked several times what I thought about the newly released game Tannenberg. So I figured I'd give you guys a sort of review in progress because the game is currently in Steam Early Access Open Beta, so it is not anywhere near complete, but I wanted to let you guys know how I felt about it and how it compared to Verdun, Black Mill Games, and M2H's previous World War I title. Now before we continue, I do need to let you guys know that I did receive Tannenberg from the developers themselves, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. I would never purposely mislead you guys, so I just want to be straightforward and honest with y'all. But that's not going to change how I review and look at this game. I'm going to let you know my honest opinions about it. Now, just like Verdun, Tannenberg is a hardcore first-person shooter set in World War I. This time, instead of the Western Front, though, it's set on the Eastern Front.
Oh! I just chopped a man's head off. That was absolutely frightening. And awesome. Ouch.
Now when I'm comparing the two games, I'm going to be talking about the two main game modes, Verdun's Frontlines mode and Tannenberg's Maneuver game mode. These are the two, epic game modes, the larger player scale battles. So we're going to be focusing on those. So to start with, in Verdun you had 32 player battles, 16 versus 16. In Tannenberg, you have 64 player battles, 32 versus 32, so there's significantly more people on the battlefield in Tannenberg. But even though there are more people on the battlefield in Tannenberg, there's less battlefields in Tannenberg. In Verdun, you had 9 maps. Currently in Tannenberg, you have 4 maps. Now of course this game is still an open beta and everything is subject to change when the game is fully released, and even Verdun got more additional content added throughout its life, so potentially where Tannenberg ends up, we will never know, but currently as it stands, Tannenberg has 4 maps. And this leads me to my first criticism or critique of Tannenberg, or something that I think may eventually be an issue for the game. And that is, if they allow that to remain the case, where they only have 4 maps, I feel like a lot of people will feel the game gets stale after a while. It is a very fun game, don't get me wrong, but every game gets stale no matter what, and if you have a limited number of maps, boredom may set in sooner. And one thing that Tannenberg does have going for it that make the maps feel different is that every one of those 4 maps has a day and night version, and they also have different weather conditions. You could have like a regular dawn, you could have foggy, you could have a snowy version, and these changes do make a difference. And Tannenberg's maps play out completely different, mainly because of the game mode. Verdun's Frontline game mode had no man's land in the middle and 2 opposing trenches on each side. One trench would take turns to attack and the other would defend, and then vice versa. And in Verdun, that fit the reality of the Western Front in World War I. Well, in Tannenberg and Eastern Front, it was completely different. In Tannenberg's game mode, you have multiple sectors spread out over the map. On opposing sides, you have a headquarters sector where both sides start, but from there the players can choose which sector they want to attack, and every sector has a different strategic value. Whether the sector has more points, or maybe it has a heavy machine gun mounted in the trenches there, or it has an ammo resupply spot, or a recon radio, or artillery radio in that sector. Every sector has a purpose, and in the center of every Tannenberg map is a key sector, or a key capture point, that is worth more points for the overall victory. Just like Verdun, in Tannenberg, the overall victory is not determined by, the number of tickets you have left from, getting killed and things like that. It is a overall point system from what you have captured and what the values are of those sectors that you have captured. So Tannenberg has a lot more strategy and maneuvering in it compared to Verdun, which matches the Eastern Front. In the actual Battle of Tannenberg, the Germans surrounded the Russians and cut them off to achieve their victory. And because you have the ability to maneuver and pick and choose where you want to attack, the gameplay tends to be a lot faster in Tannenberg compared to Verdun, where you're waiting for the other side to come attack you, or you hopefully make it across no man's land and attack them. And the things that you actually attack with in Tannenberg are a lot more limited than they were in Verdun. Once again, I want to remind you, Tannenberg is still an open beta. There may still be more weapons added in the future. Just like I said previously, Verdun had weapons added during its life, so Tannenberg may have the same thing happen to it. But currently, Verdun has 32 primary weapons and it has 23 secondary weapons. Secondary, I'm counting things like grenades, knives, clubs, binoculars, things like that as well, so keep that in mind. With Tannenberg, you have 12 primary weapons and 20 secondary weapons. Same thing applies to secondary weapons for Tannenberg. One thing that I noticed right off the bat with Tannenberg, even though there is a machine gunner slot in the squad, you do not actually have any actual machine guns in Tannenberg. All the heavy machine guns are mounted in the trench, which at first, to be honest, I did not like. I didn't like the idea of not having the option to carry around a heavy machine gun. But after I thought about it for a little while, I feel like if you did add light machine guns or heavy machine guns into Tannenberg that you can move around, the Eastern Front would quickly turn into the Western Front, where you had a no man's land and two opposing front lines. So I'm not completely against the idea of not having heavy machine guns or light machine guns spawnable from, the character slot of the machine gunner. But other than the machine gun thing and being slightly disappointed by the number of guns in Tannenberg, or the lack thereof, compared to Verdun, if I had a top 5 of my favorite video game guns from Verdun and Tannenberg, Tannenberg would have probably the top 3 slots. Specifically, 2 guns are on the Russian side, the Arisaka and the Winchester Repeater, which is absolutely a blast. Those 2 guns are freaking amazing, and I love both of them. And once again, it makes me really happy to see Black Mill Games and M2H focusing on historical realities where, Russia was buying a lot of arms from other countries, hence why they have the Japanese Arisaka. And just like most of these categories, the number of factions or nations that could wield these weapons is less in Tannenberg. In Verdun, you had 7 different unique factions. In Tannenberg, you have 3. You have the Russians, of course, the Germans, and the Austro-Hungarians. And these 3 nations do stand out and look unique, as I would expect from an M2H and Black Mill Games game. But there is less nations than what there was in Verdun. I know it may seem like I'm highlighting a lot of negatives here, or a lot of places where Tannenberg is lacking compared to Verdun. But once again, I would like to remind you, Tannenberg is in open beta. It still has a lot that they're going to add to it. There's a lot of things that they said they're already working on, and a lot of things that they've mentioned that they would like to do in the future. But beside all of that, I cannot tell you how much more I enjoy the actual gameplay of Tannenberg compared to Verdun. Yes, Verdun did replicate the World War I Western Front experience of No Man's Land. That's great, but No Man's Land is not exactly exciting. It's very deadly, and there's not much action there, which is kind of an issue for a game. The Eastern Front and the amount of maneuverability that Tannenberg has injects new life into this World War I game series. Flanking and maneuvering around enemies, going after strategic points on the map, all add a level of excitement to Tannenberg that Verdun just didn't have. And once again, Black Mill Games and M2H did it within historical context and boundaries. So while yes, there are less weapons, less nations, less maps currently on Tannenberg, which may end up changing, the gameplay part, which is the most critical part in my opinion, is significantly better. So what do I think about Tannenberg? I definitely enjoy it a lot, and I definitely will be playing it throughout its life cycle, which hopefully will be long. If you are a fan of Verdun, I would definitely do recommend it. And I hope you guys found this video interesting and informative and helps you make a decision on Tannenberg one way or another. But until next time guys, have a great one. Later.